You're chilling at home when the neighborhood HOA tyrant shows up with her so-called master key, demanding to inspect your property. But when it doesn't work on your door, she flips out and calls 911 claiming you're hiding something illegal. Little does she know, the sheriff who arrives is your own son, ready to turn the tables on her petty power trip. This is the ultimate HOA revenge story you won't believe. Stick around for the full drama. If you're loving these wild HOA nightmare tales that expose entitled Karens getting their comeuppance, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for more epic property drama, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Share your own HOA horror stories in the comments below. Let's build this community of fed-up homeowners. In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns stretched like green carpets under the watchful eyes of the Homeowners Association, lived a man named Tom Harlan. Tom was a retired mechanic, a widower in his late 60s who had poured his life savings into a modest 2-story home after years of hard work. He wasn't one for drama. He mowed his grass on schedule, painted his fence the approved beige, and kept his Christmas lights up no longer than the HOA's decreed deadline. But beneath his calm exterior simmered a quiet resentment toward the association's iron-fisted rules, enforced by none other than Evelyn Evie Cartwright, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood. Evie was a force of nature, or rather a storm of entitlement. In her mid-50s, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a wardrobe of pastel cardigans, she patrolled the streets in her golf cart, clipboard in hand, noting every infraction from overgrown hedges to unauthorized bird feeders. Whispers among the residents painted her as a Karen incarnate, someone who thrived on control, turning minor violations into major battles. Tom had mostly avoided her wrath until the day the HOA newsletter announced mandatory home inspections for community standards compliance. It was framed as a friendly check, but everyone knew it was Evie's way of peeking into private lives, ensuring no one dared deviate from her vision of suburban perfection. Tom received his notice slipped under his door one crisp autumn morning. The inspection was set for the following week, and failure to comply could result in fines up to $1,000. He sighed, knowing resistance was futile, but he made a small act of defiance. He changed his locks the very next day, installing a high-security deadbolt that no standard key could breach. It wasn't much, but it gave him a sense of reclaiming his space. As the inspection day approached, tension built like storm clouds over Willow Creek. Neighbors exchanged wary glances over fences, sharing stories of Evie's past intrusions, how she'd once fined a family for having unsightly children's toys in the backyard, or demanded a resident repaint their mailbox because the shade of blue was off by 2 tones. Tom prepared his home meticulously, vacuuming every corner and hiding anything that might draw her ire, like his old motorcycle parts in the garage. He even baked cookies, hoping a touch of hospitality might soften her, though he doubted it. The morning of the inspection dawned bright and clear, but Evie's arrival shattered the peace. She pulled up in her golf cart, horn beeping impatiently as if the entire neighborhood revolved around her schedule. Tom watched from his window as she strode up his walkway, her heels clicking like judgments. She carried a large ring of keys, the infamous master key set that the HOA claimed gave them access to all properties in emergencies. But this wasn't an emergency. It was an invasion. Evie knocked sharply, her voice piercing through the door like a siren. Tom opened it with a polite smile, but she brushed past him without a word, her eyes scanning like lasers. She inspected the living room first, noting the furniture arrangement with a sniff. Then the kitchen, where she opened cabinets uninvited, muttering about organization. Tom followed silently, his fists clenched at his sides. When she headed upstairs, he felt a knot in his stomach. This was his private sanctuary, where photos of his late wife adorned the walls, and his son's old room remained untouched as a shrine to family memories. Evie paused at the bedroom door, jiggling the handle. It was locked, a habit Tom had kept since his wife's passing. She turned to him with arched eyebrows, expecting compliance. Tom hesitated, then unlocked it, but the intrusion burned. She rifled through drawers, claiming to check for safety hazards, but it felt like violation. Downstairs again, she demanded access to the basement, where Tom stored his tools and personal projects. The door was sturdy, equipped with the new deadbolt. Evie inserted her master key, twisting it confidently, but it didn't budge. She tried again, her face reddening. Tom stood by, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at his lips. This was his small victory. The key failed because he'd upgraded the lock to something beyond the HOA's outdated system. Evie's composure cracked. She accused him of tampering with association property, her voice rising in pitch. Tom calmly explained it was his home, his right to secure it as he saw fit. But Evie wasn't having it. She saw this as a direct challenge to her authority. In a fit of rage, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911, her words tumbling out in exaggerated panic. She claimed Tom was obstructing an official inspection, possibly hiding illegal activities, and demanded immediate police intervention. Tom watched in disbelief as she paced his porch, embellishing the story with each passing second. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, and neighbors peeked from behind curtains, the drama unfolding like a live spectacle. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up, lights flashing but no siren now, and out stepped a tall, uniformed man with a familiar stride. It was Deputy Sheriff Ryan Harlan, Tom's son, who had joined the force years ago after a stint in the military. Ryan's presence in Willow Creek was no coincidence. He patrolled this area often, a fact Tom had kept quiet. Evie, oblivious, rushed toward him, pointing accusingly at Tom. Ryan approached, his badge gleaming, and as recognition dawned between father and son, a subtle nod passed unspoken. The tables were turning, and Evie had no idea the storm she'd unleashed was about to drench her. As Ryan listened to Evie's tirade, his professional demeanor masked the personal stake. She described Tom as a recalcitrant homeowner, potentially dangerous, hoarding who knows what behind that locked door. Ryan nodded gravely, then turned to his father, asking for his side. Tom recounted the events calmly, emphasizing the HOA's overreach and his legal right to privacy. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, gathered at a safe distance, murmuring among themselves. This wasn't the first time Evie's zeal had escalated a situation, but involving law enforcement crossed a line. Ryan inspected the door himself, confirming the lock was standard homeowner security, not some illicit barricade. He explained to Evie that without a warrant or probable cause, forced entry wasn't an option. Her face twisted in frustration. This wasn't how her power plays usually went. She insisted the master key granted her access, waving the HOA bylaws like a shield. Ryan reviewed the documents she thrust at him, his brow furrowing. As a local deputy, he was familiar with Willow Creek's HOA antics. Complaints had crossed his desk before, from fined residents to disputes over holiday decorations. He pointed out that the bylaws didn't supersede state law. Property rights protected homeowners from unwarranted searches. Evie doubled down, accusing Tom of fraud for changing the locks without notification. Ryan's patience wore thin, but he remained composed, radioing for backup to document the incident properly. Meanwhile, Tom stood on his porch, the autumn breeze carrying whispers of vindication. This confrontation was years in the making, born from Evie's relentless micromanagement that had driven good people away. One neighbor, Mrs. Patel from across the street, had nearly sold her home after Evie harassed her over a vegetable garden deemed unsightly. Another, young couple, the Johnsons, faced eviction threats for parking an RV in their driveway overnight. Tom had heard these stories at block parties, fueling his quiet resolve. As the second deputy arrived, a no-nonsense woman named Officer Diaz, the scene intensified. Evie, sensing her grip slipping, launched into a monologue about community standards and how Tom's defiance threatened the neighborhood's value. Ryan and Diaz conferred, then informed her that false 911 calls were a misdemeanor, wasting emergency resources. Evie's eyes widened. She hadn't anticipated backlash. She backpedaled, claiming genuine concern for safety, but the officers weren't buying it. They took statements from Tom and a few witnesses, painting a picture of HOA overreach. By now, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the lawns. Tom invited Ryan inside for a quick coffee, away from prying eyes, where father and son shared a moment of quiet triumph. Ryan confided that the sheriff's office had been monitoring HOA complaints, and this could be the catalyst for change. Outside, Evie slunk back to her golf cart, defeated for the moment, but Tom knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. As the officers departed, issuing her a warning, the neighborhood buzzed with gossip. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a larger unraveling. The incident with the failed master key rippled through Willow Creek like a stone skipped across a pond, stirring up long-suppressed grievances. In the days following, Tom found his mailbox stuffed with anonymous notes of support, neighbors thanking him for standing up to Evie, sharing their own tales of harassment. One detailed how she'd fined a veteran for flying an American flag too high. Another recounted her insistence on removing a child's swing set because it clashed with the aesthetic. Tom, emboldened, decided it was time to rally the troops. He hosted a discreet meeting in his backyard under the guise of a barbecue, where a dozen residents gathered around his grill, voices low but fervent. They formed a loose alliance, dubbing themselves the Willow Creek Reform Group, aimed at challenging the HOA's draconian rules. Ryan, off-duty, attended as a guest, offering legal insights without overstepping his role. He warned that change wouldn't come easy. Evie had allies on the board, including the president, a real estate developer with vested interests. Meanwhile, Evie licked her wounds in her immaculate home, plotting retaliation. She convened an emergency board meeting, pushing for steeper fines against Tom and amendments to the bylaws requiring lock approvals. Her emails flew like arrows, CCing lawyers and threatening legal action for defamation after rumors spread. But cracks appeared in her armor. Board members, tired of her dominance, began questioning her methods. One, Mr. Langley, a quiet accountant, confided in Tom that Evie's reign had cost the association credibility. As weeks turned to months, the reform group gained momentum. They petitioned for a special election to oust the current board, gathering signatures door to door. Evie countered with smear campaigns, posting flyers accusing the group of wanting anarchy and lower property values. Tensions peaked at the annual HOA holiday party, where whispers turned to confrontations. Tom arrived with Ryan in tow, a subtle show of force. Evie glared from across the room, her festive sweater belying the venom. The reformists presented their petition, forcing a vote. Ballots were cast amid heated debates, and when tallied, the results stunned everyone. A narrow victory for change. Evie was voted off the board, her screams of outrage echoing through the community center. But victory was bittersweet. She vowed appeals and lawsuits. In the aftermath, Tom focused on rebuilding. New rules emphasized fairness, inspections became voluntary, and fines were capped. Ryan's involvement drew media attention. A local news crew interviewed Tom, turning the story into a viral sensation. Viewers nationwide cheered the underdog's win against entitlement. Yet Evie didn't vanish. She lurked, filing complaints with the city over minor issues like Tom's slightly overgrown rose bushes. One evening, she appeared at his door again, this time with a process server, suing for emotional distress from the 911 incident. Tom prepared countersued for harassment, backed by witness statements. The courtroom became the new battlefield, with Ryan testifying as a witness. The judge, amused by the suburban saga, ruled in Tom's favor, ordering Evie to pay damages and cease contact. As spring bloomed, Willow Creek transformed. Neighbors interacted freely. Gardens flourished without fear, and the golf cart gathered dust. Tom sat on his porch watching children play, a sense of peace settling. But in the distance, Evie's for sale sign appeared. Her empire crumbled. She fled to another suburb, likely to start anew. The reform group celebrated, toasting to resilience. Tom's small act of changing a lock had sparked a revolution, proving that even in the most controlled environments, freedom could prevail. Winter's chill had barely lifted from Willow Creek when the echoes of the HOA upheaval began to fade. But for Tom Harlan, the saga was far from over. Evie's departure left a vacuum, and while the new board promised transparency, old habits died hard. Tom, now a reluctant leader in the reform group, found himself mediating disputes that once fell to her iron rule. One such issue arose with the community pool, where outdated regulations banned certain swimsuits, a remnant of Evie's prudish standards. The group pushed for updates, but resistance came from holdouts loyal to the old ways. Amid this, Tom received a certified letter from Evie's lawyer, appealing the court's decision and demanding a retrial. It claimed new evidence of Tom's conspiracy with law enforcement, twisting Ryan's involvement into nepotism. Tom consulted Ryan, who assured him it was baseless bluster, but the stress weighed heavy. Neighbors rallied, crowdfunding legal fees, turning the fight into a communal cause. As the case reheated, media interest reignited. Podcasts dissected the drama, dubbing it the key to Karen's downfall. Tom appeared on a local talk show, narrating the tale without embellishment, his humility winning hearts. Evie, from her new home in a neighboring town, fired back via social media, painting herself as the victim of a witch hunt. Her posts went viral in niche HOA forums, attracting sympathizers who flooded Willow Creek's online groups with trolls. The reform group countered with facts, exposing her past overreaches. Tensions escalated when Evie showed up unannounced at a board meeting, demanding reinstatement. Security escorted her out, but not before she unleashed a tirade captured on video, further damaging her image. Ryan, monitoring from afar, advised caution. Her desperation could lead to unpredictability. Sure enough, petty vandalism struck. Slashed tires on reformist cars, anonymous complaints to code enforcement. Tom suspected Evie but lacked proof. He installed cameras, turning his home into a fortress once more. The climax came during the retrial, a packed courtroom buzzing with anticipation. Evie's lawyer grilled Ryan on the stand, accusing bias, but Ryan's steady testimony dismantled the claims. Witnesses recounted her abuses, from forged fines to intimidation. The judge, citing lack of evidence, dismissed the appeal and imposed sanctions on Evie for frivolous litigation. Defeated, she stormed out, her facade shattered. In the wake, Willow Creek fully embraced change. Bylaws were rewritten, emphasizing resident input over control. Tom stepped back, content to garden in peace. His bond with Ryan strengthened through the ordeal. The neighborhood flourished, a testament to collective action against entitlement. Years later, the story became legend, whispered to newcomers as a cautionary tale. Tom, in his twilight, reflected on that fateful day the key failed. Grateful for the chaos that birthed harmony, the suburb, once stifled, now breathed freely. Its residents united not by rules but by mutual respect. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this insane HOA showdown. If it had you hooked, smash that like button, subscribe for more wild Karen takedowns and property revenge stories, and drop a comment with your craziest neighbor drama. Turn on notifications so you catch the next one, and I'll see you in the comments.